I was recently reading an article titled "Only About Half of IRA Savers Contribute the Maximum Allowed," and that got me thinking because based on the most recent IRS data, here's what we are seeing: about 54% of people who contribute to a traditional IRA are actually maxing it out. And here are the max limits for 2026. And that pattern does hold across the board. Under the age of 50, about 54% hit the limit. Over the age of 50, about 53% hit the limit. Even the averages make sense. If we look at those in their early 20s, they tend to contribute on average around $2,000 a year. For those in their later 40s, their average tends to be closer to $4,300 for the year. Then once you hit catch-up age, for those ages 50 to 54, they are contributing an average of $4,900 a year. For those ages 65 to 71, they are contributing on average a little bit over $5,000. And honestly, I think all of these numbers are fairly as expected, but it does raise a bigger question: why are not more people using an IRA to its full potential? It is so easy to look at this data and then just shake our heads and say people just are not saving enough. But if you really sit with these numbers, these quoted numbers, there is a lot more to the story than what it seems to be on the surface. Because this really is not about IRAs or if you are maxing out your IRA, it is about how you are saving and what type of system you are taking advantage of. When you zoom out, there are really 4 different tiers of savers. Tier number 1, quite frankly, this is no system. This individual has no retirement accounts, no consistent habit of saving, and generally if they have cash, it is likely sitting idle for many people. This is really where the biggest risk lives, and it is only partially a knowledge problem. It is also a system problem, which we will get into. Tier number 2 gives us the default saver, think 401k only. They are contributing to an employer-sponsored plan. Maybe that is a 401k, 457, 403b, or a TSP. You name it, an employer-sponsored plan type. Some might only be contributing enough to capture the employer match, or others might be contributing pretty meaningful amounts here. What really unlocks this level is automation and access, but there is limited flexibility because these accounts do come with a lot of rules. Tier number 3, maybe we will call this the intentional saver. They have an employer-sponsored retirement plan and an IRA. Here we have an investor who has moved beyond just their employer-sponsored plan. They are also opening and funding another investment account by their own accord. So here we have got someone who is thinking about taxes and strategy and really long-term planning. Then finally, we have Tier 4. This is the system builder. They have an employer-sponsored retirement plan, an IRA, and a brokerage account. Here we have multiple accounts working together. We have the ultimate flexibility and control and tax diversification. This is where true financial control lives. This is where we come up with a rock-solid financial plan. Now, here's the part that changed how I see all of this. These tiers are not solely tied to income. Primarily, they are tied to behavior, because there are plenty of high-income earners who are stuck at Tier 2, and there are plenty of modest income earners that work their way all the way up to Tier 4. Let us start with Tier 1. This is the group that does not have a system in place at all. No retirement accounts, no consistent investing habits. Maybe they have some cash sitting in a savings account and maybe not. And I want to be very clear here. This is not a judgment, because when you look at the data here, it becomes very clear that it is not just a knowledge problem, it is a system problem. When you look behind the scenes, if someone does not have access to a retirement plan through work, only about 20 to 30% of them end up with any retirement savings at all. This means the vast majority never even get started because there is no structure, there is no default, there is no system automatically pulling them in. And when savings requires you to open an account on your own, decide how much to contribute, and decide what to invest in, most people just do not, so they stay here. And this is where the biggest financial risk lives, because if you do not ever get started, compounding never gets a chance to work in your favor. Now, let us move to Tier 2. And this is where everything starts to change. This is a person who has access to an employer-sponsored retirement plan. Think a 401k, 403b, TSP, any plan type like that. These are the account types that overwhelmingly get used first. And there is a simple reason for that. There is a system built around them right now. About 60 to 65% of us workers have access to one of these plans, but that access is not evenly distributed. If you are a lower income worker, only about 30 to 40% have access. For middle income workers, it is closer to 60 to 70%, and for those higher income workers, it is about 80 to 90+%. The same story with employer size. If you work for a smaller company, only about 30 to 50% offer a retirement plan. Larger companies, on the other hand, it is about 80 to 90+%. So already you can see how this starts to shape outcomes. But once someone gets in one of these plans, well, all of a sudden things become kind of powerful in your favor. When it comes to investing, we have automatic payroll deductions, employer matching, default investment options. Really, the system is doing the heavy lifting. In other words, once someone simply has access to one of these plans, here's what we tend to see. For those who have access, 80 to 90% of households have retirement savings. If you do not, only 20 to 30% do. That gap is massive. Every time I see that stat, I have the exact same reaction. I do not think we have just a savings problem. I think we have an access problem. Because once someone is in that system and actively contributing, even if it is just up to the employer match, well, they are saving, they are investing, they are building something. Are they optimizing? Not necessarily are they maximizing their potential. Maybe not yet. but they have crossed the most important threshold. They are saving, they are in the system, and most people quite honestly stop right here. And that is not to say it is not a perfectly fine approach. For instance, let us say you save 15% of your income that you capture a bit of an employer match on top of that, and you do this for decades upon decades. Well, odds are by the time you get to retirement, you are going to be just fine, because consistency, time, and staying invested for the long haul really matters far more than trying to optimize every single account along the way. Now let us move up to tier 3, the intentional saver. This saver adds in an IRA on top of their employer-sponsored plan. Remember the stat that only about half of those who are contributing to an IRA are maxing it out. And when we look at what it takes to max out an IRA, depending on what year we are talking about, maybe it was $6,500, maybe it was $7,000. This year going up to $7,500, we look at those limits and they do not seem exceedingly high. So it might leave us to just shake our heads and say, why are not people saving more? Why can they not max out this account? But truly the answer is a lot more nuanced. First, you have to understand IRAs are not the primary retirement system in the US. They are a secondary layer built on top of employer plans, and the data makes this very clear. Only about 10 to 15% of households contribute to an IRA in a given year. But at the same time, about 35 to 40% of households actually own an IRA. So what is actually going on here? Well, the answer is most IRAs are not being actively funded. They are being held. Roughly 90+% of IRA assets are tied to rollovers, not new contributions. So the majority of money that is sitting in an IRA comes from 401k rollovers, job changes, and retirement distributions. It is not from people intentionally sitting down saying, hey, I am going to max this out this year. And when you step back and think about it, it makes a lot of sense. When we think about something like an employer-sponsored retirement plan, like a 401k, it is completely automatic. It comes right out of your paycheck, goes into the investment account, and you do not even have to think about it. With an IRA, you actually have to go set up this account, then you have to manually move money into it. Of course, you can make this step automatic, but it does require you setting it up in the first place. Then, once that money is in that account, you have to decide how to invest it. And just to be clear, none of this is hard. But it does require intention, and when something requires effort, all of a sudden we see that participation drops off pretty quickly. And here is another piece that matters. IRA users skew towards higher income earners, and a higher income household is already more likely to have access to an employer-sponsored retirement plan. They are likely to already be saving and to already be actively engaged with their finances. For context, remember when it comes to high earners, 80+% have access to employer plans. When it comes to lower earners, only about 35 to 40% have access. And access alone increases retirement participation by 30+ percentage points. So when you really look at this, we see that the typical IRA user is not starting from scratch. They likely already have an employer-sponsored retirement plan. They are likely already saving, and then they come in and use an IRA as a consolidation tool, or as a way to diversify their investments, or maybe it is simply an overflow of investments, or a way to diversify their tax strategy. So when we see low IRA numbers, it is not that people are not saving, it is that this is not the savings tool that they are prioritizing. For most households, the IRA is not the foundation, it is the next layer up. And that brings us to the more important question, does it really matter if you are not maxing out your IRA? And the honest answer is no, not really. As long as you are saving elsewhere, because IRA contributions on their own tells you almost nothing about total savings habits. If we dig into the data, this is the pattern we tend to see when it comes to lower income households. Some may have an IRA, if anything, some are not saving at all. The barriers here are limited cash flow and a lack of access to an employer-sponsored plan. Then we move into the middle income households for these households. The core focus is the 401k, often up to the match or maybe more. When we look at IRA usage here, it might be inconsistent, it might be secondary, or simply not used at all. Then we move into the higher income households. These are the households we often see maxing out their 401k and then also utilizing an IRA, even a Roth or a backdoor Roth. Then they are layering in things like a brokerage account or any additional strategies. So this really shows us something important for those who are actively contributing to an IRA. They are also likely the same people who are saving and investing elsewhere. So what we are seeing here is that we are moving up the income in the wealth ladder and we are starting to stack accounts. Then we have tier 4. This investor is the system builder because here we are adding in a brokerage account. Now let us talk about one of my all-time favorite accounts, the brokerage account. I love this account because this is your ultimate freedom fund. You can contribute as much or as little as you want. You can contribute whenever you want. There are no income restrictions. There are no age restrictions on when you access the money that is in this account. This truly is your freedom fund. And so long as you are contributing to index funds or ETFs, this can still be an incredibly tax-efficient account, but here is what is really interesting when you look at the data from the Federal Reserve. About 58% of households have a retirement account, but only about 21% have a taxable brokerage account. So right away you can see this is not where most people start. And the fact of the matter is most people who have a brokerage account already have a retirement account. Let us look at the data from the Investing Company Institute. Among households that have IRAs, about 40 to 50% also have brokerage accounts. Compare that to the general population, only about 20% have brokerage accounts at all. So, IRA users are more than twice as likely to be investing in a taxable account. And let us look at just a little bit more data from the Employee Benefit Research Institute and the Federal Reserve. Among high-income households, the majority have a 401k or similar plan type, an IRA, and a taxable brokerage account. In many cases, 3 or more account types is the norm for these higher income households. Once somebody moves beyond just using their employer-sponsored plan, they are account stacking. They are building a system that will ultimately give them a lot of flexibility. It is not just about one account anymore. You now have a 401k that is doing the heavy lifting. Your IRA is adding to the tax strategy, and then your brokerage account is giving you flexibility. This is really the investor who is optimizing. This is really the investor who is asking, how do I create the most flexible, the most efficient system, the kind of system that allows me to hit all of my goals? So here is the very clear pattern in how people build. Most people do not start with a brokerage account. They go for a 401k because it is automatic or any other workplace sponsored plan. Then they do an IRA, and this is an intentional choice, and then they move on to a brokerage to offer some optimization within their plan. And once you have that brokerage account in there, oh, you have given yourself so many options. You have the chance to access that money early before the age of 59 and a half. Maybe you have the option to retire early. Maybe you have the option to control your taxes and be a little bit more intentional with income. It just opens up a world of possibilities, and it gives you a more comprehensive strategy. So the whole goal when you do this account stacking, when you have multiple different account types, is to find the best way for all of these account types to work together. So should you focus on maxing out your IRA? Maybe if that aligns with your goals. But no matter what, you do need to be investing and building for your future, and how you get there and how many accounts you use and how much money you put in each account, well, that comes down to your personal situation. It is about how to best build a plan that suits your needs. Because life is not a race to a certain dollar amount. It is about how you feel when you wake up in the morning, knowing you have a safety net beneath you. I used to think that unless I was doing everything perfectly, I was failing. But that is just not true. If you are putting away a little bit of money every month, even if it is just into your 401k at work, you are doing great. You are building a habit. And habits are the bricks that build the house of your future. Sometimes it feels like we are being yelled at by experts who tell us we must do this or we must do that. But the truth is, your financial journey is allowed to be slow, it is allowed to be quiet, and it is allowed to be simple. In fact, the simpler you keep it, the more likely you are to stick with it over the long run. Think about your investments like a garden. You do not need to check the soil every 5 minutes or worry if every single plant is the tallest in the neighborhood. You just need to make sure they have water and sunlight, and then let time do the heavy lifting for you. That is the beauty of index funds. They are the quiet workers that do not ask for much, but give you so much in return. We often get caught up in the anxiety of the housing market or the latest layoff news, and it can feel like the ground is shifting. But when you have a system, even a small one, you have a place to stand. That is what I want for us. A sense of groundedness, a sense that we are okay. So do not let the pressure to max out an account keep you from starting or keep you from being proud of what you have already done. Every dollar you set aside is a gift to your future self, a way of saying I care about you and I want you to be comfortable. It is about creating a life where you have the bottom line of security so you can focus on what actually makes you happy, whether that is traveling or spending time with family or just having a peaceful afternoon with a good cup of coffee. Money is just the fuel, but you are the one driving the car and you get to decide where we go. So if you are at tier 1 right now, maybe just look into if your job offers a plan. That is a huge first step. And if you are already at tier 4, maybe take a breath and realize you have built something incredible. We are all just trying to find our way. And it is okay if your path looks a little different than the person next to you. Actually, it is better that way because it is your life, not theirs. I really hope this perspective helps take some of the weight off your shoulders today. You do not have to be a math genius or a market wizard to have a good life. You just need to be a friend to yourself and make small, gentle choices that add up over time. Because when we treat our finances with kindness instead of fear, everything starts to look a little brighter. So, what are your thoughts on these different account types? How many account types do you have? I would love to hear. Let us get the conversation started in the comment section. I post new videos every single week, and I love seeing your stories and your progress. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. It helps me know what kind of conversations you enjoy. If you are new here, please consider subscribing so we can keep going on this journey together. Or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing it with them. It is always nice to know we are not alone in how we feel about money and life. I will see you soon. Take care of yourself.